Hey, sis, and welcome back to another episode of the Balanced Woman Podcast. Today, we're talking about how to chase your goals without burning out with Miss Whitney Graves. Whitney is a global project manager, holistic trauma therapist, and the host of a podcast dedicated to helping women achieve their goals while prioritizing their well being. She's also a wife, mom, and the leader of a community of Christian moms, so she knows firsthand what it's like juggling multiple roles without losing yourself. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by your goals or struggling to find balance, this conversation is for you. Today, Whitney is going to share practical strategies to help you stay on track without sacrificing your peace. You're going to learn how to set boundaries that protect your time and ways to prevent burnout while still making progress. Whitney, welcome to the podcast. Whitney, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you with us this morning.
I am happy to be here.
Thank you for joining. As you know, this podcast is a little newer, and so it's been great that so many people have flooded in and bringing all this insight and guidance to women who truly need it. A lot of women in my audience are ambitious. They have goals they want to achieve, but they also wear so many hats, right? Like mom, wife, career woman, business owner, whatever the case may be. And with all these responsibilities, it's easy to feel like you're just constantly on go, is what I like to say, right? You're running on fumes, you're running on empty.
Yes.
From your experience, why do you think so many women struggle with burnout when they're pursuing their goals?
I think that it's definitely a struggle because sometimes some of us grew up with a timeline kind of over our heads of what certain things are supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Unconsciously, we have this goal or finish line to be to a certain point of like, mama, I made it kind of
Mhm.
thing. And we didn't always have the tools or the resources to really figure it out. And so I think we're kind of in an era of now there's so many things available to us and we're grabbing and choosing and we're just really trying to make it. And it's kind of all happening at the same time of like getting married. Some people have kids, the kids are getting older. And so it's really, really easy to burn out when you can't, or I guess not can't, but struggle to be really self-aware
Mm-hmm.
while you're on this path and on this journey. Because we kind of coming out of, survivor's mode and we're realizing this don't feel good. Like I don't like this. I don't think it's supposed to feel like this. And without having those models kind of before us or, those resources that was kind of handed to us, we're doing it all by ourselves.
Mm.
And it's so easy to burn out like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, you hit on so many points. And I think the one that stood out to me personally and professionally the most is feeling like I have to check every box. Like all these things have to be done, or worst case scenario. But I think the thing that some people struggle with, even before all that, right? Like we kind of have this, and I'm not going to describe this in the best way, but this is how I say it.
Mhm.
We have this moment where everything's going well, and then it feels like space burnout, right? Like, what would you say, or what insight would you give to people to know when they're starting to get burned out? Like, I know sometimes in therapy we call it the yellow flag, right? Instead of getting to your red flag moment, what are some signs that you're in that yellow flag stage?
Signs of the yellow flag, in my opinion, is overwhelmed, feeling like
Mm-hmm.
there's way too many things on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
For me now, it's anxiety versus living in a state of anxiety. Now I've gotten to a point where if I feel anxiety, I know that, some being that self-aware of your body, noticing your sleep patterns, if all of a sudden you're not sleeping well, that's a sign, that something's going on. And then also too, lack of motivation. And sometimes that doesn't look like how we think. For some people, it's not getting out of bed, but some people it's like you don't want to meet for that hour with your girlfriends when,
Mm-hmm.
usually you like to connect with them. And so also paying attention to that self-talk of, oh, I don't want to go. I'm so tired. Like where is that coming from? Have you had that time for yourself? That may be a sign that something more is going on. And it's not all of the people around you, but, it may be that check-in that you need with yourself.
Mm, you made me think of something. We kind of have I don't know about for you, but when you just said that, it made me think about how we bring certain people into our lives that kind of hold us accountable in that way to take care of ourselves, or hopefully we do. I know not everybody has that. But it made me think about my friend girl and how she'll kind of reach out sometimes, like, I haven't heard from you in a minute. And for me, I may have not have recognized that was my yellow flag, but she's kind of waving the flag for me.
Mhm.
And so I think that that's really good because I noticed some of the things too, like the sleep, or I'm really on edge, like you mentioned, same, right, with some of the anxious thoughts. I'm wondering how you would encourage women to ensure that they're getting the rest or just what they need in order to get out of that yellow and go back to that green.
Yeah. So for that, being that I totally understand the ambitious woman, a lot of
Hmm.
times we're planners. And so I like to use that to our advantage.
Hmm.
I've become really big on, just like you plan all of these events and all of these goals and all these things that you know that you need to do, plan that time for you. So I've started telling them, hey, plan your nothing day in advance. So we're at the end of March. You should
Yeah.
already have your nothing days on the calendar for April,
Mm.
maybe even May, right? And that nothing day, you get to decide what fills your cup. If that is happy hour with the girls, hey, start getting in the group text and planning to see who can come. But if that's literally just getting in your bathtub and listening to your favorite podcast, that's what it is. If that's laying in bed and binge watching TV, that's what it is. Whatever it is that fills your cup, as far as like just being mindful of yourself and asking yourself, what do I need, and honoring that. Because a lot of times we don't do it, and sometimes we don't know what those things are. So we can also use that time as a self discovery explorative. So I would also sometimes assign self discovery type homework for people to go and explore these things by yourself so that you can figure out what those things are too.
Mm. I like that. Oh, that's so uncomfortable though. I mean, I think we know because we're usually, I like to say, we're on the other couch, we're on the other chair. So we get to, we have the fortunate pleasure of asking the question and not having to answer it. But to your point, when you give people this homework, right, of like, hey, sit in that discomfort, go and discover who you are, what do you think is the thing that gets in the way most often for those type of people or those type of women?
Honestly, a lot of them just haven't had it. They
Mm,
haven't had to do it. Recently, I've also heard the opposite of, well, I grew up by myself and alone. And so I don't want to do stuff by myself. But that also has put me, in this bubble of like,
yeah.
and so because you've changed, right? And so it's still kind of necessary, but I think that it's okay to do it, with some level of support. Like, maybe I'll go to a coffee shop that morning by myself, but then I'm meeting my friend at the mall nearby and we're going to window shop. And so thinking of it in a way where it still feels safe for you and it's not like a whole day I have to spend alone and that's just dreadful. Maybe going to get your favorite matcha, and while you're sitting there, what do you like to do? Are you a person that people watch? Do you like to have your headphones on and just quietly bob to your tunes while you look out the window and view the birds? If it is uncomfortable for you to sit there, why? Just notice that. Like, what is it? But it's important to at least maybe try.
That no, I like you hit on a lot of key points. It's not only scheduling it, it's being uncomfortable with it, and it's acknowledging that the person you might have been when you were younger, they liked a whole different set of things. The everything that used to fill their cup either doesn't matter or it's heightened in a different way. Like I'm just thinking personally, back in the day, that's when you know you're old. But back in the day, I was really involved with like a lot of sports and stuff like that. And so through my own journey and everything, I learned, oh my God, like I really love to exercise. And so it shouldn't have been a surprise, so to speak. But I did go through that period of time where I was like, well, I'm an athlete and that's it, but I didn't really participate in it. And so I think it's good that like they do have that insight of like, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, but also what about now? Like being very present focused. And I think like sometimes that's a barrier with some of the individuals that I see, whether it's therapy or coaching, is that they feel like if they are doing those things to like fill their cup or take care of themselves, they're not being productive. How would you say that they could shift their mindset around there or kind of even reframe that thought of rest is unproductive?
Yeah, that one's tough. That one also took me a long time to learn that one. And unfortunately, with that one, it took getting burnt out and
Mm,
getting to the bottom of that to kind of come out of that to shift the mindset. And so I would love for people to be able to reframe those thoughts prior to getting to that point. One of my favorite ones that I like to use is even if or even though blank, I blank. And so, even though it feels like I'm not being productive, I am spending quality time with my friends, and that makes me feel joyful, you know? And so, literally taking what you're doing and transforming it. And generally, I like to say the things that you're doing should already be attached to your values anyway. And
Yeah.
so, it's kind of like just viewing it from a different mindset. And so, like, you're going on a family outing, or let's say just, Uno with your family instead of typing up and finishing those emails that you need to do. Well, if you say you value family, which most people say that they do, right? Not
Right.
everybody, most people, then shifting the mindset to even though I have these emails, I'm spending quality time with my family, and that is something I value. I'm
Mm,
making memories playing this Uno game and who did the most draw fours and who, like really try to be present in that moment of like
yeah.
what's going on and how is this also still attached to you and of value to you outside of your production.
That's it. You know how someone says something and all these memories start flooding you? I'm thinking about a few of my coaching clients who I've tried to use that same framework, though I do love the shift that you spoke about. Like I'm gonna be still in that and put that in my back pocket to use. I know that one of the things they struggle with is, I'm just going to use your example, is, yes, I could go and play Uno with my family because I value my family. And I need to check these emails and work because I value my family, because I need income for my family, because, I have to provide for the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
How, I'm always curious about how everybody else does it. How would you shift that mindset? Like if they are hitting that, because I always say that's like a mindset wall, right?
Yeah.
Because some folks are like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense. Like my value is family. I should spend time in that value. Whereas some people are like, well, spending time in that value is doing this task that's going to burn
Mm-hmm.
me out.
Mm-hmm. That one, I like to say two things can be true,
Oh,
right?
yeah, there you go.
Two things can be true. There is a perspective of what that looks like. You
Yeah.
have to figure out what's more important to you. And so for that, I might suggest time blocking. So if we're gonna go to the ice cream shop for noon with my family, then I'm working on whatever I need to work on maybe from 8 to 10. And somebody else is making breakfast instead of me.
Yeah.
But 12, that shuts down and I'm valuing my family in another.
I like that. Especially my little type A personality is coming in and I like live off my calendar for everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm a time blocker and habit stacker and batcher and all the other fancy blitz words. But yeah, that spoke to me because I'm thinking a lot of times that's what I have to do is like pass off a task to someone else. That way I'm still prioritizing it, to your point. Like maybe breakfast does need to be done by someone else, or hey, the kids need to get cereal this morning. Like it's okay. We all love
Yeah.
a little cereal bowl, but still making sure that like I make the time so that I don't have all this guilt and everything later when I need
Mhm.
to yet again prioritize myself.
Mhm.
What would you say to people who struggle with that? Like some of those folks who just like to go with the flow.
So my goal with the flowers, I think this is really important for them to know
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be the biggest bang for their buck, for their buck,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right? For my family, I recognize that their love language is quality time. And so I'm going to prioritize quality time over anything else. They don't really care
Yeah.
about none of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I might be words of affirmation and I'm trying to leave cute notes in your lunch kit. They don't care. They like quality time. And so for me, I'm going to prioritize that. If for your family is buying gifts, then maybe you have a tradition on Sundays, y'all go to the mall and they get to pick one thing for a certain amount.
Mm.
And you're done, right? But making sure that it's in there, on at least a weekly basis because the going with the flow, you can do that the rest of the week. But for sure Sundays is that day where you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
if possible. It can trade days or whatever. But I think for those people, it's kind of like, what's going to be the best bang for your buck when it comes to what your family needs or, what you need.
So it's really like digging into that motivation. Like, well, you say this party that like this is the value. How are you going to take care of that value? Everything else can have a flow. Everything else can be flexible.
Yeah.
But this thing right here, it needs to be done. And oh man, I'm so envious of those people sometimes though. Because I like think if I'm on vacation, I go with the flow. But everything else in my life, I'm like, I gotta make the time. There's a lot of balls to juggle.
Seriously.
Like it, I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I don't even try to learn it because I'm like, what works for me works for me.
Yeah. No, I don't know how they do it either, but it's great. It's great
Yeah, if it
for them.
works, like, but I think to your point, it's like, hey, but you do have to like have a little bit of flexibility in that we can't be so rigid in our flow or how we like to do things that we're not willing to do what works and that we
Right.
know works. Man. Okay, so I want to pivot for a second
Right.
because I'm a goals girly. I love talking about goals. I love striving for goals. And there's a lot of burnout that comes with goal setting, goal achieving, goal maintaining, all the blitz words, right? I want to start from the very, very, very beginning. And as therapists, I know we always love to start with SMART goals, but even before then, how do you know, or rather, how can you set time aside in order to achieve a goal in the first place? Like if it's weight loss, for example, I know everybody's on their weight loss kick right now. It's the spring to get ready for summer. Um, so if it's, hey, y'all, like I know I need to lose weight, very generalized. How do I make the time for that?
That's a big one. So once again, I like to go back to values for
Mm,
that. Because the thing with I want to lose weight is okay, but what do we it's kind of like, okay, but what
yeah,
are we gonna do about it?
yeah.
I can say I want to all day long, but what's my why? You know,
Mm,
for me, it's I don't want that A1C to go up. So even when I don't feel like it, I am now a woman of a particular age where a lot of people in my family, I saw their health decline or they have some type of disease or disorder. And so for me, it's not, yes, I want to lose weight, but it's more so I value my health and I gotta do it. It's an appointment with myself that I can't cancel. I can shift it around, I can reschedule it, but it's not based on what I feel like doing. It's based on the fact that I have to keep this appointment with myself because my why is I don't want to be like that. I don't want
mhm,
those. So I would say that whatever the goal is, make sure it's attached to something that you feel deeply about and then make those small changes. Everybody's working out right now to be ready for summer, but ideally to not stress about it, maybe we should have started in January. So giving yourself more time so you're not like, I gotta go 5 times a week. It's like, is that realistic for you? If you work,
mm,
8 to 5 and have 3 kids and, a side job too,
yeah.
give yourself that time, give yourself that grace, be realistic with it. Maybe your workout don't look like going to the gym. Maybe it's a family day playing kickball and then we race back and forth who can make it the fastest and you getting your steps in.
Yeah.
So also shifting the mindset of what working out for you or whatever this goal you have looks like for you to be realistic for what your situation is. So you're not just saying things and then feeling that guilt when you feel like you haven't attained
I like that because especially in the age of like social media where everything is so aesthetic and it's
it.
nice, it looks nice and it
Mhm.
sounds nice. But getting up at 3 a.m. doesn't work for everybody to go to the gym and do your thing and then come back and do kids and do work and
Yeah.
all the other things that you mentioned because we know it doesn't end at work. You're just clocking out of one job and clocking into the next one. And
Yeah.
so, like, again, I think it goes back to how you know it's realistic and how to hold yourself accountable to that. Like, what would you suggest for women who are like, okay, maybe the 3 a.m. doesn't work, but I can run back and forth and do kickball, right? And so,
Mhm.
like, now I've made it realistic. How can I hold myself accountable to that? Because maybe I can't do kickball every Tuesday, or whatever the case may be. How can I hold myself accountable in these goals?
I think figuring out maybe what's worked before. So for some people, they're calendar people. Some people they need that accountability where you have someone that's doing it with you. A lot of my friends, we all follow each other on the watch, so it's kind of like if I see my homegirl finish her walk, I'm like, let me go do my walk, because it'll send me a thing to just finish her 30-minute walk. Okay, let me do that. And so, like, implementing little things to kind of help for me, sometimes I might put my gym clothes on and just, I'm online all day on the camera. So I might have a jacket over my gym clothes while I'm working because
Yep.
it will motivate me to go ahead and go if I already have my attire ready, you know. So putting in those little things to just kind of help with that accountability, but figuring out what works for you when it comes to that.
I like that. As you're saying that, I'm sitting here with my sneakers on, so I make sure that I'm like getting my steps in because otherwise, with those bedroom shoes on, sit on down, I'm gonna just relax because that's like that. You're right. My get up is telling me that. Like I've set it up to relax instead of setting it up to move my body or put parameters in place. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the one that's a little uncomfortable for people sometimes. And I think it's because this word is used so much, boundaries. And because it's like two things right now. Either you're associated with saying no all the time, no matter what,
Mhm.
or you're associated with being like super rigid in what you want, what you need, what you deserve. How can women set appropriate boundaries around their time and their energy and like just all the things while they're trying to work towards their goals to make sure they don't burn out?
Well, first, I think first we need to keep clarifying that
Yeah.
boundaries are limits that we set for our own personal comfort, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I'm gonna do for my own personal comfort if something feels a bit violating to that or against that in some kind of way. I think it's also important for people to know that there's different types of boundaries. So there's emotional boundaries, there's physical boundaries, you know, there's verbal boundaries, and figuring out maybe which one you actually need. I think some of us maybe became so rigid and like everything, like no, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's a complete sentence, but you know, maybe it's the verbal boundaries that you kind of have to work on versus the physical is not really a big thing for you.
Yeah.
So, for example, an emotional boundary, you may need to be a person that's a self-assessing all the time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are my needs? What am I feeling? You know, today. What's on my calendar? If I say yes to this, is that gonna compromise how I'm able to show up for this other thing that's already been planned? And
Mm-hmm.
then verbalizing what that is for you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to come. Unfortunately, I already have this planned, and that's not gonna work. Are you free? Blah 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 day. You know, it's nothing wrong with that. But I think a lot of times we don't have the boundaries because we are so focused on the guilt we feel by having to say something to someone else versus honoring ourselves. And so I think that's important for people to realize when it comes to
Yeah. And I think you hit yet again on that first step of like, what do you value? What do you prioritize? Because I could see the barrier coming in place of being, well, I can move this for myself. Like, I don't have to go to the gym this morning if we're taking the same example. Because, like, yeah, I need to go to this thing for my friend. I really need to make sure I show up. And next thing you know, it's been 3 weeks and you don't even know the word gym no more. Like, and like now you continuously push it back instead of identifying that like my health is a value. And so I have to prioritize this workout or prioritize, whatever in relation to that and setting boundaries or putting things in place to make sure that you can get those things done. Like you don't have to stress it. I love that. I'm big on values though, so I'm a little biased. Okay.
I think we both are.
I know, but now you got me thinking about my routines because I'm a 4:30 a.m. girly with my workouts, but I have two littles, so I definitely never tell anybody to wake up at 5 a.m. if they don't need to. Like get your
No.
sleep because I'm in
Yeah.
bed at 8 and you might not be. So
Yeah. But I'm big on telling people to like don't go against your natural flow if you don't need to, right?
yes,
If you know you're a night owl, then your time might be once you put those kids to bed, if that's your, if that's your situation,
exactly.
So I think it's really important to honor that too.
Okay. So I always ask this question kind of towards the end of the pod here, but what is one key takeaway that you want women to take in regards to being able to actually achieve their goals without burning out?
Something, and I wish I remember where I heard it first because I like to give people their credit, but
Yeah.
something that has really stuck with me is be where your feet are.
Mm,
Be where your feet are while still taking these steps forward. When you feel yourself getting ahead of yourself, when you feel that overwhelm, when you start looping those questions in your mind, it's like, let me be where my feet are. What do I need right now today? What is important to prioritize right now today? And it's okay. Any small step you're taking forward is still progress in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're getting too far ahead of yourself, that's where that burnout and that anxiety and that stress, that's where it is. It's because we're moving too far ahead of our plan versus being right where we need to be.
Yeah.
And so that's my affirmation. That's my reminder for any woman that's super ambitious, have all these things that we want to accomplish, but really struggle with being in the here and now. Just kind of reground and replant yourself because that's really, really important.
I love that because I'm one of those people that you mentioned has to like self-assess constantly throughout the day because I'm usually not where my feet are. I think that's why I like to move throughout the day. So I feel like I'm still, I'm still going, I'm still moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, grounding yourself in the moment to remember like what the actual priority is or what I'm actually supposed to be taking care of in this moment. And that helps so much. I mean, I used to have like, I mean, I still get sometimes some migraines, but definitely not as often as before. But I used to get those migraines because I'm just sitting there like overthinking and like, okay, and we don't even realize we're doing it because we think that we have just this task list in our brain that we're checking off. And
Yeah.
so I realized I had to do like kick it a little old school in our world, but like do a little brain dump of like all the tasks and go, okay, now that I see it,
Mm-hmm.
what are like two or three actual priorities off this list that I have to do this morning?
Yep.
And those are the things. So, but I love, ooh, look, back pocket, be where your feet are. Like, we're going to give credit where
Literally.
credit's due, whoever it is. Thank you so much. That was
Yeah.
tea. But still, like, I'm using that. That is good. Ooh, Whitney, this was so good. Tell, tell the listeners where they could find you, how they could work with you, because you have plenty of gems that they need.
So on Instagram, I am at well with wit underscore, and I promise I'm gonna be more active on. I'm there. You can also reach me at my website, Worthington Therapy Services.com. You can also shoot me an email, hello@whitneygraves.com. I am a trauma therapist. I specialize in accelerated resolution therapy and women with anxiety. I have a heart for women with children with high needs. On top of being a mother, that's just a little razzle dazzle that we
Yeah.
also have to deal with that causes a lot of stress and anxiety. And so I love working with women like that. I love the LGBTQ community. Those are also my
Mm-hmm.
people. So if that resonates with you and you're in Texas, feel free to reach out to me. So everybody keeps asking. So it is coming, quarter 3. Wits Wellness Workshops will be coming back here in where you get to learn a little something, do a wellness activity, and there's always some sort of thing to take away as well. Because I'm leaving here with something, and it's gonna be knowledge. It's gonna be fun. It's also community. So yeah, that's
I
all.
love that. Now, do you offer virtual and in-person services for therapy or one or the other?
So I do virtual mainly.
Okay,
For the
perfect.
resolution therapy, anybody that's interested in that, it is in person per request, um, based on what their needs are. But yeah,
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'll make sure all this is linked below so everybody can easily get to it. Whitney, thank you again so much for joining the podcast.
no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Man, shout out to Whitney for all the tips on burnout while we're trying to navigate these goals. If you're in any of my groups or follow me on social, you know we are heading into quarter 2, or as I like to say, our next set of 12-week goals where we are focused and aligned with our needs while we're making sure that we prioritize everything we need to without burning out. So, sis, if this episode resonated with you, I want you to know that you do not have to figure this out by yourself. In my one-on-one coaching program, I help overwhelmed women like you build sustainable routines, create realistic goals, and protect their peace while still making progress. Doing this all without burnout. You know what I mean? Even if you have little people that you take care of and you're the house manager and probably the manager outside of the home as well, this program is for you. If you're ready to stop running on empty and start creating the balanced life you deserve, book a free discovery call with me. Whitney, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. This is such a rich and needed conversation. And sis, remember, balance is not something you find, it's something you create. Until next time. Bye.